You know, when a world leader's speech at the UN gets derailed, you'd think it's some big diplomatic crisis, right? Well, not always. Sometimes it's just a broken escalator and a teleprompter that won't work. Today, we're going to dig into this really interesting incident where a couple of simple technical glitches blew up into a full-on international he said, they said situation. All right, so picture this. The UN General Assembly. The stage is set. But the real drama? It wasn't at the podium. Nope. It happened right after the speech, and it all started with two, let's say, very public and pretty unusual complaints about the tech. And this whole thing really kicked off when then-President Trump decided to take his complaints public. He basically turned a couple of what you might call technical hiccups into a massive viral headline. So what was the complaint? Pretty straightforward, really. He said the teleprompter wasn't working and the escalator was broken. But here's the thing. In his mind, this wasn't just, bad luck. He actually framed it as a direct reflection on the United Nations itself, kind of like a sign that things there were just dysfunctional. Yeah, and let's be super clear here. This wasn't just some casual, off-the-cuff remark like, oh, the escalator's busted. No, this was a direct accusation pointed squarely at the UN. So that leads to the big question, right? Who was actually to blame for all this? Well, according to President Trump, the answer couldn't be simpler. The United Nations was responsible. Period. It was their equipment, so it was their failure. But the United Nations was not just going to sit there and take that. Oh no, they fired back, and they came with a really detailed and honestly an incredibly sharp response that just completely flipped the entire story on its head. And this is where it gets really, really interesting. Look at how the UN framed their entire response. They used this powerful Hindi idiom, which basically translates to, the thief is scolding the policeman. Think about that for a second. This wasn't just them saying, nuh-uh, we didn't do it. This was a clever, rhetorical move. They were basically saying, the person who's guilty is blaming the innocent party. A total flip of the script. Okay, so if the UN is pointing the finger right back, what's their side of the story? Let's do a little digging here and see what they say really went down with that escalator and that teleprompter. First up, the escalator. Now, you'd probably think, okay, simple mechanical failure, stuff breaks, right? Well, according to the UN, what actually happened was something else entirely. So what was the UN's claim? They said the escalator was working perfectly, until it was manually shut off. And get this, it was shut off by a videographer from the American delegation, a member of Trump's own team. All right. But what about the teleprompter? I mean, that's a much bigger deal, right? A glitch there could totally mess up a major speech. So the big question is, who was really in control of that piece of tech? Well, you guessed it, the UN had an answer for that one too. And this really gets to the heart of the UN's entire argument. According to an unnamed UN official, the teleprompter wasn't even under their control. Not at all. It was being operated directly by White House staff. And the implication there is pretty clear, isn't it? If the thing failed, well, the responsibility lies with the people who were actually running it. So let's just lay this all out on the table. When you put these two stories right next to each other, what you get is a classic textbook case of international finger-pointing. I mean, it is the perfect he said, they said scenario. And just look at how this breaks down. The pattern here is, well, it's pretty undeniable. For every single complaint that was made, the UN's explanation points the blame right back at the American delegation. According to them, these technical problems weren't UN failures whatsoever. They were issues caused by the president's very own team. And that kind of brings us to the big takeaway here, doesn't it? I mean, in the grand scheme of things, a broken escalator, it's nothing. It's trivial. But this tiny little incident, it actually reveals something huge. And it's that in the world of high-stakes diplomacy, everything, and I mean everything, is political. It really makes you wonder, right? How many other huge political stories out there actually started from the smallest, most ordinary little glitch?